You may know Vlad as the previous finance club president, like I said. Now he's taking over New York City as he is currently an investment banking analyst at Bank of America Merrill Lynch. He just transitioned from a corporate banking role where we covered U.S. operations of foreign firms with $2 billion plus revenues and over $30 billion of debt facilities, finance for public and private companies, primarily in the industrial, consumer retail, and financial institutions sector. He's experienced with investment grade and high yield clients covering facilities like revolvers, term loans, senior secured, unsecured notes with a focus on financial modeling, credit analysis, and leverage capacity. I know very little of what that meant. And so we're glad Vlad is here. He's going to tell us. And so welcome, Vlad. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Sean.
All right. Well, we are going to jump right in. So you are currently, you did say you're in Manhattan. So you're in Manhattan, in New York, doing investment banking. That's exciting. I know a lot of people have an interest in that. But before we jump into that, let's talk about kind of how you got to where you are now and how you got to CSU. So can you kind of take us back a little bit and talk to us about how you decided to attend, the CSU College of Business, and your major was finance. How did you decide to concentrate in finance?
Well, I knew ever since I was a very young kid that I just wanted to make a ton of money in life. So I was like, finance is the way to go. So I decided on going to Colorado State senior year of high school, and from there I'd worked a summer job at Walgreens, and where my manager, weird random story, ended up working at Walgreens, but he came from a finance firm on the East Coast. The whole backstory, different stuff, but whatever. And he had told me that one of the best things he thinks to do is that if you're going to go in business is to take finance, because if you do finance, say as a degree, that you can choose to go to like marketing jobs, you can choose to go to HR jobs, you can choose to go to supply chain jobs. But it is very hard the other way around, that if you take for example, supply chain finance or a marketing job or a marketing degree, to go into a finance job. So he just thought like the versatility of it means that you can go into whichever one that you wanted to go. So from that point on, I think maybe by the third day, I decided that I wanted to go to do finance. And then I also was going to do a computer information systems minor, but decided against that and went with economics, as I thought it was a little bit more relevant to what I was doing.
Nice, excellent. And that's great info. I always like to ask kind of how you got here, because we'll have a lot of first years joining us, and they're trying to figure out what concentration, they're going to study. I know we'll also have a lot of seniors and juniors who are like, "Ooh, I want to work in investment banking." So yeah, we're excited to start with the basics there. How did, I remember Patty said you had started with corporate finance and then went to investment. You kind of tweaked your concentration a little bit. What was that about? Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I guess for everyone on the call, I think Sean and Patty have known since freshman, sophomore year of college. So that's just the context there. No, I think finance, I was what are the three sub-concentrations? Corporate finance, investment analysis, and then I think real estate finance is its own separate thing now, but I did both of those for finance. That I didn't change. I think what she meant I changed was that initially it was finance and computer information systems, because I thought it would be good to have like a tech background, but decided that in my view that since I'm not really going into a tech role, that having a degree like computer information systems, which if you're going to go work in it, great, but having it to supplement finance doesn't work as much, given that, if it's something you're not constantly doing, you might be outdated within a couple of years. And so for me, having a second degree in economics, which, doesn't really change, that kind of can continue to hold on, CIS didn't make any sense, the amount of effort, if I was not going to be going into a role in it. And I feel like a lot of that stuff might have not been relevant in 2 to 3 years, since it's not something that I consistently do.
Nice. Okay, perfect. Well, let's talk about the specifics now. You are now, what's your official job title? And tell us your official job title and the company you work for, and then tell us what that really means. What do you do day to day? What does your day look like?
Yeah, so It's actually not analyst, it's associate. So investment banking associate at Bank of America. So the official name, I don't think no longer is Merrill Lynch. It used to be that until like a rebranding a couple of years ago. So a little bit of background then, I started in corporate banking at Bank of America as the analyst and then switched over to investment banking, coming in as an associate. To the way that they rank hierarchy at most of these banks in these kind of areas is analyst, associate, vice president, director, and then managing director. So associate is kind of a third year role. And what was the second part? You kind of like what do I do and how I got into this role?
Yeah, what's your day look like?
Yeah, so when I was in corporate banking is a role that we pretty much do lending to large companies. They have to have a minimum of $2 billion in revenue. And they divided it by sectors. I specifically worked with the U.S. subsidiaries of foreign companies. So think of companies like Samsung, Grupo Bimbo, LVMH, where they have significant operations in the U.S. and those guys have their own like different financing needs. That's what I worked with. And then I recently decided to switch over to investment banking. And the difference with investment banking and corporate banking is that corporate banking works with kind of the debt side. You're focused on the financing needs of these companies, pitching to win, financing them with term loans, with bonds, those sort of things, versus investment banking. They're both roles that work with like kind of the relationship managers, but investment banking specifically focuses more on strategic advisory. So I work in the financial institutions group. So sector covering banks, insurance companies, asset managers, specifically specializing in on the insurance company's coverage. And so the main role of the job, right, is like as an analyst and associate, you're supporting the MD whose job is to go and pitch deals. They're out there trying to talk to the clients on like companies that they can buy. Maybe they want minority spinoffs. Maybe they want to like take on leverage. Maybe they're looking to do different sort of things. So they come to the banks to get those ideas. And so our job is kind of to do the grunt work, the analysis behind the pitches, the deals, those sort of things.
Nice. And what is your part in that? How much are you behind the scenes working in the office? Do you ever talk to an employer, or do you ever talk to your clients? Do you go with the managing director to see clients? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do is talk both about investment and corporate banking because they're both a little bit similar, but more of my experience has been in corporate banking since I moved into this new role recently. But I guess with investment banking, it's very hierarchical, very traditional, lots of layers in between. Corporate banking was a lot more flat. So in instances in corporate banking, it was typically an analyst and associate, or maybe two analysts, so two juniors assigned to a director to support them. And so with those lending stuff, many times in my group, I would like contact or reach out to the client directly, work with them, versus investment banking, it's very different, it's very hierarchical. This one, typically client contact is left to the managing director, and the way that they would assign something is they usually want a first-year analyst to do the grunt work, an associate to review their work, a VP to kind of be the middleman between what the managing director or the director wants and communicating it to the analyst and associate. So my role in that one would then be reviewing the work that the analysts are kind of doing, making sure there's no errors, making sure that they're pointing in the right direction. And then that would go to the VP, whose job is then to kind of, I guess, again, another layer of review, but also pretty much they're the ones kind of dictating what the MD wants.
Gotcha. Okay, I like it. So tell me about the positive. What do you love about what you do? And I know you wanted to be an investment banker for a long time. You are one now. So what do you like about it?
So kind of true. I didn't know that I wanted to do this until my internship. I was very unfamiliar with what it was just because the recruiting is very accelerated. Typically, they're already targeting sophomores and freshmen for a lot of these roles. And, unfortunately, by junior, senior year, it's kind of very late and difficult to get in because it's just very advanced. I got my offer my sophomore year for my internship my junior year, summer. So about a year and a half in advance. What was the question again, actually? Sorry.
What do you like about it? What's your favorite part of investment banking? What excites you?
I forgot to mention too, so B of A as well. So I think overall Bank of America is like great to work at. I think you hear that from everyone. I mean, I still hear that from everyone, and I don't think there's a person on this planet who would tell you that the company they're working at is shit or has a horrible culture. So I mean, you got to take that with a grain of salt. But I honestly do believe from the cultures I've heard at other banks. I've had friends at JP, at Goldman. at all those kind of places where they kind of regret working there because of the culture, the hours. And I think for me, like, it's actually funny among my group of friends, I think I'm the only one who loves my job and loves the people. Everyone around there complains about the job, the culture. A lot of this is mostly Goldman specific because I have a lot of friends there, and everyone else just looks at me and they're like, oh, he's just chilling. So I think the big thing I love is overarching. There is a great culture at B of A, and then there's also a very good culture in corporate and investment banking, which is like the next layer. And then specifically within my vertical as well, there's a great culture. So I think one, I do enjoy the people. The work is reasonable. Since I'm not an analyst, I don't get the worst of the hours. I mean, they're still like harder hours, but they're not like as bad as being an analyst. So I guess for the first couple of years, it really does suck. It gets a little bit better, but I think overall I enjoy the work because one, the people are great, and then two, the work is what I kind of enjoy doing. I prefer that technical analysis. Corporate banking kind of goes into that, but not as much as investment banking does. And so I'm getting the job that I wanted to, which is, I enjoy looking through financial statements, looking into an industry, pulling data on it, kind of like going behind, like, what is this company? What do they do?
Nice. I like it. Okay, now on the opposite side, you talked about the really good things you like. What is the challenge? What challenges you? I don't want to say bad things. But what is the challenge for you with your job?
I think for me, like I said, I avoided the worst of it, but typically for people with this job is that the first 2 years can really suck. It's very hierarchical. It's very traditional. I mean, these days it's been a lot better. Like being incorporating of like diversity in terms of also work-life balance. I mean, the last couple of years were just horrible for that, and there was a lot of pushback. So that has gotten better. So typically now, like, you can leave to work from home at like 7 to 8 p.m. Whereas before, maybe that wasn't the case. Fridays as well are work from home, but typically, I mean, like for an example, I think a couple of weeks ago, there was a Sunday where I worked from like 9 a.m. to 3 a.m. So like one continuous day. And that was like one of like the 4 or 5 days where it was like 9 a.m. to like 2 a.m. every single day. So, I mean, the hours are where this job really sucks. And then I can tell from the analysts that theirs are really bad as well. So typically, they come in at like 9, 10 a.m. They're not usually done working until like 2 a.m. So that's probably where the biggest struggle comes in, is the hours. And then I think whether the culture is very group by group dependent, whereas for us, I don't really think there's like too many assholes. There are like definitely like those personalities.
Yep. Nice. Well, let's talk, you've kind of alluded to this a few times, but for those who have this interest in investment banking, what does that path look like? You talked a little bit about the analyst, and I know that's not where you went in, but you've seen it a little bit. So can you talk through starting through entry level to analyst to what you're doing now? What's the next step also on your role? Where do you go from here? But let's start with the kind of analyst. Or even internship. What does a career look like in investment banking? And again, I know you didn't go in that way, but I think you know enough to have seen it. Can you tell us, if we're thinking here, sitting in Fort Collins, like I want to go to Wall Street and work on there, what are students going to expect? What should they expect?
That, like I said, that if you don't know that you want to do this by freshman, sophomore year, it is very difficult to get in. Typically, the junior internships are handed out sophomore year.
Okay.
And so by your junior year, I've seen some people occasionally break in, but definitely by the senior year, it's very like, and I think I need to separate this between, I think investment banking is a lot easier to get into if you're not aiming for New York. So if your goal is still to get to investment banking and then move to New York, that's a lot easier path. But I know the competition is specifically for New York. For example, there's a ton of jobs in investment banking in Chicago or San Francisco, and people just want to go to New York. That's where they want to go, right? So that's where the competition is. So there's actually a lot of jobs. You can find middle markets, you can find boutiques in Denver and Arizona and Florida. The competition is just typically for New York. Even at like major cities like Chicago and San Fran, it's not as much competition. But anyways, yeah, the typical process, right? The stereotypical of where it was mostly elite institutions has mostly died down. I would say that half of the class, there's definitely big diversity recruiting, but also in terms of like non-target schools. So they've definitely opened up to like trying to reach out to a lot of other schools. One part of it is geographic. I think there's still a concentration of like East Coast and Midwest is where a lot of the recruiting takes place. They don't really come out to like anywhere else aside from that. But some of the basic qualifications that they really look for if you're trying to get an internship or undergrad is like, typically you have a great resume, GPA, they typically want like 3.6 and above. You need to have like finance experience, so like a finance internship, that you're in the finance club, you've done some of your own investing. So pretty much a why banking, why do you want to go work at Bank of America, those kind of things. So it's usually something that does start very early. I guess the next path for me would be, the big thing with analysts is they don't expect them to stay after 2 years. And so there's usually like banks do a lot to try to get people to stick, but most don't want to. So they try to like do a lot to get you here. And so after associate, I would say where most jobs, it's like, it's uncertain if you're going to continue moving up, because it's very dependent if a spot is open. Just because of the high turnover in investment banking, it's kind of almost, as long as you're average, honestly, it's kind of guaranteed to make it to a director, just because turnover is high. So usually I feel like what I hear with other people in like corporate finance jobs is a lot of it is dependent if like a spot opens up in a senior position or the person above you leaves. Typically here it's, pretty straightforward, just because the lifestyle is not the best. And so like the turnover is high. I think for me, I'm trying to give this role a couple of years and then deciding what I want to go from there.
Nice. And I think that's important. I just want to highlight that for a minute, especially for students who are listening. It's hard because, like Vlad said, they're making those offers early to students, first and second years, for investment banking, where a lot of times students don't figure it out until third or fourth year that that's what they want. So I would say this: if you were thinking of exploring this area, come in and talk to the Career Management Center. We can help you kind of start getting those connections and start getting yourself together. It's a really competitive job. And so if you have an interest in it, do things like this, be listening to folks who are doing the job, but also come in and talk to us. There's lots of things we can do to help get you ready for it. All right, so Vlad, think back. Is there anything of your time here at CSU, whether it be a class, a student organization, even a part-time job, whatever it is, or what experience did you take away from CSU that you're still using now to this day?
I mean, I'd probably say the most important two things for me was finance club and investment fund. And I would say that's probably because of the group of people. There's kind of like a group of people that we hung out with. I think they mostly like died off after I left, or maybe I was the last of them, but I don't know how it is now. But I mean, I didn't really know about all of this banking stuff until I went into finance club, until I met them. Sean, you maybe remember like Matt Pesci, Michael Hugg, those kind of guys. Just saw them at a wedding like a week ago. That was kind of being involved as like, coming in as a freshman and a sophomore, hearing from the junior and senior guys that, hey, you should get started on this. Because I think the biggest issue is that you don't realize investment banking is so advanced in recruiting that by the time you think, oh, I've discovered a junior year, that's honestly too late if you're trying to do like New York. That's usually very difficult, very like, almost nigh impossible, I would say. Like I said, it's a lot easier if you choose to go to like different cities and stuff, which I would recommend if you're a junior or a senior. There's lots of investment banks around locally that you can go to. That's what one of my friends did. He didn't want to go to New York. So I would say that it's just very advanced recruiting, but like finance club and investment and summit fund to be able to get some exposure to talk about it. Getting familiarity with financial statements, with how companies run, of how like picking stocks. I don't really think they ask like how to pick a stock, but one of the big things with investment banking, I think they're a little bit more lenient. They're definitely lenient on sophomores. Juniors, they're a little bit tougher, but it's getting through the technical questions, the technical interviews. It's very much a lot of, are you able to answer these questions? And then can you show me that you really like banking, you've done research, you know what you want, kind of thing.
Okay, nice. Talk through that a little more, just because I think, like a super day and things like that, it's just so competitive. Do you have any other suggestions? How do students prepare as they're doing interviews for internships or full-time jobs? What do you suggest they spend a lot of time preparing for?
A simple Google search. I feel like I get this question asked so many times, and if you just Google, it probably will be one of the first results that pop up, like IB technical questions. There are like dozens of websites, high quality, because there's so much interest in it, that all the information is there. It's just whether you choose to commit and be consistent with it. Mergers and Inquisitions is one website of a former investment banker, great resource, talks about banks, industry groups, exit opportunities. interview questions. Breaking into Wall Street's 400 technical questions is also a great thing. You can find a Quizlet. If you are able to memorize all of those, that'll probably give you an idea. That'll really prepare you for it. But so yeah, typically the way it goes, first you have to have a great resume. It has to be like no format issues at all, no spelling errors. Again, if you're not coming from a target school, having a GPA below 3.6 is probably not gonna really like help you out. They're a little bit more lenient with like higher ranked schools, but with anything that's not like a top 8, you know, that's what it usually is, unless you like know someone high enough inside. After that, you'll get a higher review. I think all first round interviews these days are done with higher reviews, so being comfortable with being able to go through a higher review. And I'm pretty sure there's
what's a higher review?
That's where your first interview is literally with just like a automated robot that asks you questions and then you just record yourself saying it. And so instead of people doing the first round interviews, it's just a recording. And there's also, I'm pretty sure if you look it up, online websites that you can practice those. So after that, there might be like, I think a first and second round interview. And then from there, they come into super days. So super days are just really long interview processes. Typically, they'll fly you. Like for me, they did this. I had 2 super days the same day, but they flew me out to New York and then come to the office, and then you have interviews with them. They range from 2 hours to, I've heard of some like 6 hours long, but I would say the average is probably 3 to 4 hours. Pretty much, you have like 6 to 10 people come and interview you. A combination of behavioral and technical questions.
Okay, nice. All right. Wow, this time goes fast. It's already 12:25. We overshot our questions. For our students who are listening, we've kind of hit the question time. If you have any specific questions, if you can raise your hand or type it in the in the chat box, and I think Brittany will help us. Will help us with those. I have additional questions, but I just want to give it a chance for other people to see if they have some questions. While we're waiting, let me ask one specific one, Vlad. Again, you alluded to this for yourself, and then especially on the analyst position. What are your hours? How many hours in general do you work a week?
Right now, the market is slow, so I don't even think this is like cognizant of it. But I think the big thing of banking is there's a ton of downtime. It's just typically like that late hours can be bad. I think the big thing about investment banking, it's very unpredictable. There could be a week where you literally have nothing, which I've had, or you could be a week where, like, for example, I told you the worst week I've had so far was like, I don't know, Thursday, Friday. There was like a Thursday till like 11 p.m., a Friday until 11 p.m., a Sunday 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., or it's 9 a.m. to 3 a.m., a Monday till like 2 a.m., and then I think the earliest I was able to finally be done was like at midnight. So it's definitely a 7 to 8 hours. If you're beginning, then yeah, that's what it is. I would say that the caveat is typically the hours are late, but like one of the things I just hate is that like there'll be many days where I have nothing to do all day, and then at like 4 p.m. work comes in. So I think that's, for me, the associate hours have been a lot better. And I also noticed one of the big things too is that, and I think this just comes because I did a similar job, was that it takes me like 20 minutes to do something. And like my new role, as I've been told, is that my job is 70% reviewing, 30% doing the work. I'm not supposed to be doing the work, the analysts are. And so there's been many times where like I could have finished something in 20 minutes and then they're taking like 3 hours. So I think a lot of the late hours just comes in trying to like understand how to do something.
Gotcha. Oh, that's interesting. All right. Do we have any other questions for folks? I know we're kind of coming short on time. This really does go so quick. Brittany, are you seeing any questions come in, or should I jump on?
You can ask another one, probably one more.
What's that?
You can ask probably one more question.
All right. So here's, and you've kind of mentioned this a couple times, but I want to get really specific. If we're here in Little Fort Collins, Colorado, we love Fort Collins, it's a beautiful place. But if there's a student and she's thinking, I want to go and I want to be an investment banker on Wall Street. Luckily, she's a first-year student, let's pretend. What are your suggestions? What should that student be doing right away to get ready for it? to try to find a position in Wall Street? What do you suggest? And is that realistic? I mean, you got there obviously, but how do you get from Little Fort Collins to, Manhattan, downtown with a beautiful skyline like that? What do you suggest students should be doing?
If you are young and early, so like coming in freshman and knowing you're in a big advantage because again, the sophomore programs are a lot more lenient. There's a lot less competition because people aren't aware. And so typically one of the big things is for all of these investment banks and then also a lot of PE firms is that they have a lot of insight. And so these are typically freshman, sophomore events that they invite students. If you just go on any of their websites and you just go for like student programs, you'll be able to find their programs. And if you apply for it, I imagine there's a high chance of success. They pretty much take you out for a couple of days to their locations, teach you about the firms, about the different groups. And you're pretty much put on like the front of their application list if you apply for an internship. That's how it happened to me. Is my sophomore year, they flew me out to Charlotte and then actually just by themselves followed up like a month later asking me what divisions I would be interested in and then invited me out for an interview. So if you're coming in freshman year, big thing is, have a list of the top 10 banks and PE firms you're interested in, follow their websites. There's lots of insight events, sophomore and freshman events, do that. If you're able to secure a sophomore internship, which they do exist, that'd be great. If not, at least find a relevant sophomore internship that you can use to talk about experience. It doesn't even have to be finance related since it's so young and early, but having some professional experience that you can talk about. And then after that, just preparing for the interview. So you have to be comfortable and be you have to have rehearsed, but you have to come off not rehearsed. You have to like practice so much that you can come off natural of your story, why banking, why this particular bank, why this sector, if you're interested in this sector. Sorry. People are walking by making faces. Why this sector, and then also, I think at the sophomore, again, I'm not, I follow the thing of prepare for the worst, hope for the best. I think at the sophomore, they don't really ask too many technical questions, but at the junior level, you can definitely expect a lot. So you're at the junior level, you can expect your, why, or like, like walk me through a DCF. Why would you choose this company? Why would this talk about a deal in the market? Can you walk me through how this changed in one of the financial statement items flows through the three of them? So those kind of things.
Okay, nice. I like it. All right, I can't believe it. It is already 12:31. The time does go quickly. Last quick general question, Vlad. Any suggestions? And you kind of had this specifically, but just any suggestions for students who are starting school or getting ready to graduate? What's your final suggestion for a good career, finding a good career?
I mean, I guess those are kind of two different things though, right? About to start college versus just graduating.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're starting college, biggest thing is you need to come in. My mindset was like, yeah, I'm going to party and enjoy my life, but you need to have the mindset that you want to be ready to get a job and get a good job. Yep. Because too many friends didn't start seriously looking until their junior or even senior year, and they were kind of like shit out of luck. So I think coming in early, it doesn't matter if you don't know what you want to do long term or what you want to do with your life, but I knew coming in I wanted to get a good job and have that mounted down. And I think for those, so I guess coming in for college, for those about to start college, there is a real advantage in getting started early, in having internships early on and being involved with clubs, those kind of things. And then for those exiting college, I guess depending on what you've done and what you want to go into, I don't know. I mean, that one's kind of more subjective, but just kind of deciding what you want to do in life. If you're exiting college and you want to go into investment banking, trying to aim for those. I mean, I would still try for New York positions, but aiming for those outside of New York and then lateraling over is a lot easier than, frustratingly trying for New York. Okay. I think jobs wise, I've seen many different definitions of happiness and stuff, but I think one of the big things is just I don't know, not comparing yourself to anyone because there's always going to be someone better than you. And so just kind of being content where you are at and be willing to work to where you want to be.
Awesome. I love it. Great advice. Hey, Vlad, can you humor me and do one more thing before we get going? Open
Yeah.
up that window. Let's see your view. That's really what I want to see here.
Let me see if it's not gonna blind or not. So if you guys can hear me,
Yep.
wait, no, this way. That way is Times Square. Can't really see it too well because it's blocked. And then this way is, I guess all the Midtown Manhattan stuff.
Nice. That's awesome. It's just such a good reminder. Even though we're here in the middle of Colorado, little Fort Collins, you get a great education here at CSU, and whether it be Manhattan or Miami or wherever else, if you work hard and really try hard and start early, especially, you can get wherever you want. And so I think that's a great lesson to take away. And Vlad, I think you're a great example as an alum. I know you worked hard for what you have, and you got to where you wanted to go. And I think you'll just kind of continue to grow on that. And we're excited to see where you go. And yeah, excited to watch your career increase. All right, with that, we are actually over time, and I want to be really aware of Vlad's time. I know he stays busy. So with that, folks, this recording will be in Handshake. You can look at it there. And if you have questions about investment banking or careers in finance in general, or careers not in finance, if you decided it's not for you, come in and see us. We are happy to help you. So, and again, join us next week for our alumni chats. We're excited to talk to folks every Tuesday. Vlad, thank you very much. This was awesome, and I really do love that view. That's really nice. Better than mine, let me tell you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean, for having me. Really appreciate it. And if you want to, just feel free to look me up on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. If I don't respond the first time, just follow up a second time.